What is up, YouTube? It's Mr. Rolldaddy again. Season is winding down, but not over yet, so I've got to do another Iowa Hawkeyes football analyst video. This weekend, it is a pretty big matchup as the Iowa Hawkeyes take on the Minnesota Golden Gophers. So, before I get started, as always, all views which I express in this video are completely my own. I don't represent those of the University of Iowa, the Big Ten Conference, any media outlet, or anyone or anybody who is whatsoever affiliated. This is just my own self-project that I'm doing. Now, before I get started here, I'm going to be doing something a little differently. I'm going to go start out in my freezer this week. See what I've got here? I've got some bacon. Yeah, I know it's not what you were expecting me to start out the video with, but it's kind of significant. Let me show you why. Yes, Iowa plays for the Floyd of Rosedale Trophy this weekend, and the reason why I showed some bacon is because the Floyd of Rosedale is a pig. Yes, it is a trophy of a pig. So, yes, I've got the bacon in my freezer, and my Hawkeyes, they've got to make me want to celebrate by eating that bacon I've got in my freezer. If Iowa wins, I'm going to cook some of that bacon up on Sunday morning to celebrate. But the Hawkeyes, they've got to earn the right for me to eat that victory bacon. And again, a big thing is Iowa really just needs to focus on this game, not any future games. And if they just focus on this week and get the job done, I'm going to be eating some bacon on Sunday to celebrate keeping that pig trophy. The Floyd of Rosedale, back in Iowa City. Now, we're going to get to the offense. My first offensive role key. Use the bubble screens this weekend. This is an idea that I'm liking, especially in the first and second down plays here. So, bubble screens, if you're not too familiar with it, it's just a quick pass to the inside receiver, and it's only thrown a few yards, and the receiver, it's up to him from there to get extra yards, and it's honestly not that complicated of a way to do so. Get the passes off quick to get those extra yards, and Brady Brechter, Arlen Bruce, they're the most ideal options, in my opinion, to get the ball in the bubble screen. Because in the end, those guys can fake out those defenders, get the big yardage gains, which is so crucial in this game. Let me explain a little more why getting the big yardage is pretty key here. Because Iowa's offense, it's got to be quick strike. The tempo's got to be there. And there's a good chance that Minnesota may play an offense to keep Iowa's defense out on the field for quite a while. I'm going to explain a little more on that later when I get to the defensive side of the ball. But because of this, you'll see why I say this a little later on in the video. Do not wait to throw it deep this weekend. I love the ideas of Ohio and smash routes. They got to be utilized early and often. So, because those are some really good routes the receivers can run. Get some separation from the quarterback. The defensive backs, and get down the field. But the receivers, because of this, they got to catch before they run. This is not a week for them to get the simple drops. They cannot risk the simple drops this weekend. Now, one thing my high school did when I played high school football is, especially against some tougher opponents, when we got really deep into conference play, we used a no-huddle lightning and tempo offense to get some plays off a little quicker. That's really going to be useful for Iowa this weekend. Because, again, Iowa needs to strike quickly on offense. So, all teams do it differently, but what my high school did was when we ran the tempo or lightning offense, it was interchangeable. So, something we practiced, used against really tough opponents. we'd have one of our assistant coaches just give us a hand signal on which play we're going to run, and maybe we'd have a sign saying, hey, this is what we're going to run. So I think there's an advantage for Iowa to use this weekend. Now, my third offensive role key, don't allow the defenders to get close to the ball. I mean, especially if the ball is being played in the air. Because, look, Breland Oliver and Beanie Bishop, they're some of their best defensive players. And from what I have seen and heard, they are great at pursuing the ball, getting turnovers, and breaking up the passes. They've got to lead the jump balls in the air. I'm sorry. I've been working on this for a while. Been working a lot. So if they leave the jump balls in the air against those guys, that can end up being really dangerous because those guys are turnover machines. Whatever Iowa does, they cannot allow them to get to that ball at all. They've still got to play some careful football. But even if Iowa decides they're going to avoid Oliver and Bishop, they cannot let any other defenders get the opportunities to get the turnovers. Now, my next offensive role key, Iowa has got to, and I mean they got to, make all of the key blocks. As look, I said this earlier, I'll say it again, yards and gaining yardage, that's going to be so important this weekend. The offensive linemen, now, offensive line, like, yes, those guys really have to play every single team differently, but this week especially, this is for every game, but especially this week, they must take their guy out. They cannot allow any further movement from the defenders they are blocking. So, getting the yards, getting those extra yards. It all starts out with the offensive lineman making the key blocks. Space to run is so important for getting that quick strike offense. And if there isn't any space to run, not only can it lead to missed yards, but also some fumbles, which, again, Minnesota's got some good defensive guys that know how to get the offense to turn over the ball. And Terrell Carter, he may not be talked about too much compared to the other guys, but he is a huge interior defender. He's been known for stuffing runners. If you're playing him, you've got to block him. You have to take him out. It's that simple. Now, finally, my final offensive role key of the week. Line up Caleb Johnson in multiple spots. Yes, running back and wide receiver. Look, from what I've been watching over these past couple games, I'm really liking how Caleb Johnson has just been developing with his offense. He is really becoming a star, and he's becoming one of our best offensive weapons. And you know what? I'm thinking, how about we also line him up at wide receiver for a little bit as well? Not every play, of course. We need him in the backfield often, but look, Iowa's going to a very hostile road environment this weekend. This is a good opportunity for Iowa to just get something new out. And this is really a good way to take some momentum from Minnesota's defense, because one thing I believe is, yes, especially in a big rivalry game where the home crowd's going to be so in it with the defense, there's got to be some way for the home defense to have some momentum taken away from them. So show Minnesota something that they have not seen on tape. Line up Caleb Johnson at wide receiver, and of course, you don't have to throw it to him. They'll throw it to him sometimes, but guess what? You can also do the jet sweep. So when the wide receiver just gets an inside handoff from the quarterback. And that will definitely catch Minnesota a little off guard. They might not know what has hit them. So Caleb Johnson, I really like how he's developing. Play him a little bit at wide receiver this weekend. I know this is a bold move, but it's one I think Iowa should try. All right. We're getting into the defensive side of the ball. So here's my first defensive role key of the week. Minnesota's offense. They are very high scoring. They currently average over 30 points per game this season. And of all teams in Big Ten West, that's the highest average points per game that they have of those 7 teams in that half of the conference. And Minnesota, one thing they do well is they utilize many guys on that offense to their own skills and advantages. They've had quite a few players over the past 5 years from the offensive side of the ball that have made it to the NFL, and it's no fluke. Minnesota just knows how to use their guys pretty well. They're not going to lessen up on offense. More often than not, if you're playing Minnesota, you're going to be in a dogfight until the very end with their offense. And last year's game, it was probably one of the best Iowa versus Minnesota games in a while. It was a true back-and-forth seesaw battle. And ultimately, Minnesota, they were down by 5, had a chance to win in the final seconds, and it came down to one final failed Hail Mary from the Gophers. But it wasn't like it was so far out. Like, I don't remember where exactly it was, but they were only like 40, if not 50 yards away from converting. So if they could have executed that one, they could have beaten us on the very last play. So don't underestimate Minnesota's offense at all. Now, here's my second defensive role key. Stamina and toughness, they both will go a long way this weekend. Remember how I said earlier Iowa's got to have a quick strike offense this weekend? Well, I took a look at some Big Ten stats today, and of all 14 Big Ten teams, Minnesota is the leader in time of possession. And this is something that really good teams that have a really good offense can do very well. They'll know how to chew the clock, and they'll know how to keep their defense out for less time by scoring, but taking a while to score. So Iowa's got to be tough, have the toughness to still play tough while they're out there for a while, and it can't wear down so much to where the offense can't respond, because Minnesota, they are great at chewing off the clock. And I'm going to guess that they're going to put together a game plan that is going to keep Iowa's defense on the field for quite a while. Not just once, but I'm going to say multiple times throughout the game. So stamina and toughness, it's going to go a long way this weekend against this team. Now, here's my third defensive role key. Their running game's got to get stopped. Mohamed Ibrahim, he is a touchdown machine. He scored quite a bit this year. Iowa's defense, they've just got to go all in to stop him, because if he slows down, there's a chance that their entire offense may slow down. I mean, again, Minnesota has a great all-around offense, but some games, they're just so heavily reliant on this running back that they have in the running game. So Iowa's defense, they've got to have guys wide and in the middle ready to tackle him. And not only does Iowa need to commit to stopping them, but they've got to force Minnesota to have to really open up the playbook. Stopping him often is really going to force that to be an option for Minnesota. Now, here we go. The fourth defensive role key of the weekend, the passing game. That's going to be a big factor no matter what. Now, Tanner Morgan, he's been with Minnesota for many years now. He's their primary starting quarterback, but he did not play last weekend. He's uncertain to play on Saturday, but guess what? If he can't go, just don't underestimate their freshman quarterback too, Athan Kalikimanis. So, yes, he's a redshirt freshman, but he played his high school football in a very competitive Chicago suburban area. In fact, it's a town that's only 30 minutes from where I grew up from. So he won. I saw his bio. He won many conference awards. He placed a lot of new school records at Antioch High School. And he was also a 4-star recruit coming out of high school. So again, he may not have the experience that some of the other guys have, and I know I've been touching up on experience quite a bit in my videos this year, but don't underestimate him if he's going to be the starter, because he's got some good traits to him. And last weekend, when he had to start against Northwestern, I mean, yes, his numbers weren't great, but he did enough to run the offense well. And he's only got up to go from here as a pretty young player. Don't underestimate that guy if he is going to be Minnesota's starting quarterback this weekend. Now, finally, my last defensive role key. Use the cover 3 this weekend. Their receivers get the job done. Yes, obviously Minnesota's had a couple of receivers in the past couple of years get to the pros, and it's no fluke. And these guys who Minnesota has for receivers this year, they're no fluke either. They know how to win the games. I mean, all 4 of those guys, they're all, first of all, they're all upperclassmen, but any one of those 4, it can be any one of those 4, they can all get it done in the passing game. This is not a team that is so reliant on one particular receiver like some teams are. Those guys, they all know how they can get the job done. However, another thing to note, none of those 4 wide receivers, none of them lead the team in receiving. They have a 6'7" tight end. He leads the team in catches and passing yards. Brevin Spanford. And so, again, like, Minnesota does have a great running back, but with Michael Brown-Stevens, Chris Ottman-Bell, Daniel Jackson, and Dylan Wright, I mean, any one of those 4 guys could be the one that has the show for the wide receivers, in addition to, obviously, their tall top receiver at tight end. So, what I'm thinking Iowa should do this weekend, utilize the cover 3. This is really a good coverage. It stops deep passes, and it stops the yards after the catch, but cover 3 is also strategized to where there's going to be some guys that are going to stop that running game as well. So call a lot of cover 3. I really do think a cover 3 this weekend, that may just be enough to play a lot of balance on defense that can stop both the running and the passing games from many great weapons that Minnesota has at the offensive skill players. All right, the X Factor role key. This counts for both teams. Play this game and only play this game. Look, both teams, they have a simple path to winning the Big Ten West. But the Big Ten title game, guess what? That's not this weekend. That's not next weekend. That is 2 weeks from now. No one's playing that game yet. And guess what? Next weekend when, yes, it's rivalry weekend for a lot of Power 5 schools where, yes, obviously most of them are going to play such a hated rival. Well, guess what? Minnesota's not yet playing Wisconsin. Iowa's not yet playing Nebraska. It's Iowa versus Minnesota this weekend. And the reason why I point this out is because if one of these 2 teams looks too far ahead to next weekend or the possibility of playing in Indianapolis in 2 weeks, the team that looks too far ahead, trust me on this one, it will be bad for the team doing so. Neither team can do that at all. Both teams have to remember they're playing Iowa or they're playing Minnesota. It's that simple. All right. We are finally back. This is how I end every video. Rolldaddy's Big Roll of the Week. This is a surprise tactic, trick play, or an interesting strategy that I would utilize this week if I was an Iowa coach that could catch the opponent off guard and give an advantage to the Hawkeyes. All right, and again, I have to utilize a new one every single week. I cannot use the same Big Roll of the Week more than once in a year. The same one can never be used twice at all. So, thinking about this one, this is one that I have been saving for a while. I've really wanted to make myself think on when I think this would be a good time to use this one. But I'm thinking that this week, it's the most simple time to use possibly this simple big roll of the week. It's probably the most simple thought that's out there, but here we go. The fake punt or fake field goal, maybe even both. So yes, I'm thinking this is a really good weekend even great weekend to do this. So I was playing in a hostile road environment. One thing I really think could give quite an advantage here to Iowa is if they can take any possessions or any points away from Minnesota that they don't expect. So, yes, Torrey Taylor, he's a world-class punter, but honestly, try having him run the ball. Try having him run a fake punt. If they do so, use it at around the 40 to 50-yard lines where they'll be close enough to score, and they must have the intentions to score after executing the fake punt. They cannot be punting again once they pick up the first down. They're going to score in some way on that drive. Now, fake field goal. I do think this is a good weekend for that. So, it's laying the air. Iowa's in a hostile environment. Minnesota's fans should really be into it and run that fake field goal when Iowa gets to the goal line. Now, obviously, it's got to be 4th and goal when Minnesota's totally expecting a field goal. But I'm going to say the 2 to 5 yard line is the most ideal spot to get the fake field goal executed well for a touchdown. Though of course, it can happen from anywhere. I saved this one for a while. And again, the fake punt, fake field goal, something nearly every Madden NCAA football player has tried, including myself, maybe even quite a bit. It's not used too often in real life and in real games, but this weekend is the best weekend to do it. All right. I really do thank you for making it this far. Iowa, I hope you win. Let's go, Hawks. Let's get the game won. Fight for Iowa. And again, if Iowa wins out, they're playing in Indianapolis for the 2nd straight year. Again, focus on this week. Get that job done. Have a good weekend.